What's up, guys? This is Kyle is Wonderful. Hell in the Cell 2022 just finished. Wow. Definitely went into this show with no expectations whatsoever. We knew Seth versus Cody and Hell in the Cell was going to be good, but my goodness, things took a wild turn throughout the day, and I'm right now almost speechless, almost blown away. I had planned on doing this review right after the show, so that's what I'm going to do, but my goodness, I can't believe a WWE B show, almost C show, and basically a show that was like a Raw exclusive, other than the damn Baron Corbin versus Happy or Madcap Moss match from SmackDown. They didn't even fly. They didn't even bother having Pat McAfee there. It was such. That was literally the only SmackDown match. So I went into this zero expectations. And what are the and I'm just blown away right now. We'll get into it, but what are the things you look for in a good show? Well, these are the things I look for. Did it have at least two good matches? Hell in the Cell 2022 did have two good matches. It was the opener and the closer. It was the women's title match, Raw women's title match, and the Hell in the Cell match were both great matches. Um, Another thing is, did it have um, at least one or two titles feel like they were um, elevated from that show? I feel like the Raw women's title definitely showed that they're the A championship in the women's division in all of WWE is the Raw title for sure. And I think of the US title just by getting on the damn show improves where it was at the bottom. Again, no Intercontinental Championship defended on a pay per view. Um, for I don't know how many pay per views it's been in a row now, but it's been since WrestleMania of 2021. So we're talking going on 14 months now since the Intercontinental title has been defended on a pay per view. But anyway, we're talking about things that I would say what makes a good show. It had two good matches. It had two matches that elevated the title. It had progression of storylines. As far as the Raw Women's title, we there one of the people was kind of robbed. Not really, because it's every man for themselves in a triple threat, but we kind of can tell where the Raw Women's title is going to go for the next title defense. And then also the Judgment Day furthered their storyline, I guess. It wasn't a major turn, but at least um they have a basis to go off of for tomorrow on Raw. Another thing for me, I'm a sick MFer. So did it have blood? Did it have color? Yes, there was. I think at least three people were bleeding in three different matches tonight. So it had that, and then it also another thing. I like to have fun. So did it genuinely make you laugh throughout the night? Well, and it doesn't have to, it can be intentional or unintentional, and this one was unintentional. The boring Madcap Moss Corbin match just finishes, and Moss gets his win, like as if we didn't think he was going to win, but and they quickly go to a crowd shot where it's a guy wearing a RK Bro 420 shirt flipping off Madcap Moss. That was the reaction the Chicago crowd was giving him. So that genuinely made me laugh. And then one more thing, did it take you on an emotional journey? And Lord, that main event and the news throughout the day took me on an emotional journey that I'm still on a high from. Um, that main event was crazy. So we will get into everything. Um, Give me a like and a subscribe. I've mostly been doing WWE 2K streams for um, Universe mode, and that's been going pretty good. We're getting some good subscribers and people watching. Probably some of the best and most in depth as far as the NXT roster that you're gonna find in any. You might find some, but with better. But nobody has like all the performance centers. But yeah, give me only the main event match. You like that? I mean, I could see that. I like two matches tonight, and I like the main. I mean, the opening match with the women. But that main event was crazy. So yeah, I went into this thinking it was gonna be like, okay, Seth versus Cody's gonna be good. I don't really care about much else on the card, but I just went through the entire list of things it had. It had emotional journey with the whole Cody thing. It had elevation of two different titles. It had progression of storylines. It had color. Three different people bled tonight. It had moments that made me laugh, like Madcap Moss getting flicked off as soon as he won by the crowd. That was freaking hilarious. And I mean, what more can you ask for in a B show in WWE? So we'll get into it some more. But I reluctantly, even though some of this card was trash, got to give this show a thumbs up. It checked all those check marks I just went through. So we'll get into it here. But man, what a crazy 8 days. Going back to MJF, um, not going to the fan fest. Was he going to show up to the pay-per-view? Then it was a great AEW pay-per-view. CM Punk wins the title. And then CM Punk injures himself diving into the crowd on Dynamite. Doesn't relinquish the title, but has to get surgery on Rampage just 2 nights ago. And now I'm so I came home from work. I wanted to get up the WWE Universe Mode streams up on the channel before the show, and I knew the pre-show wasn't going to be much. And trust me, if you didn't watch the pre-show, you didn't miss anything. But I was streaming all the way up until 5 minutes before the pay-per-view started. I go on Twitter and I see a Jason Salamonster tweet something about, "Oh, come watch my show after. We'll talk about everything with the Cody injury." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" So then I type in Cody Rhodes on like the search, and I'm like, no freaking way. So apparently it came out about 4 hours before Hell in the Cell started. Cody Rhodes has injured his pectoral muscle, and apparently that brawl on Raw, we knew it was a good brawl. It was definitely one of the better brawls we've seen in a while, and as a consequence of them making it look legit and real, Cody tore his pectoral muscle on the right side. Apparently, he was working out and lifting weights, tore it completely off the freaking bone. And Cody said that he will, in fact, compete in the main event. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, so I find this out 3 minutes before the show starts. And of course, they confirm it on the show when it starts. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm not gonna lie, Cody comes from that old school where his dad, they don't call it the dusty finish for nothing. It's a little bit of Carney. And like I thought in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, maybe it was a work, maybe it's a storyline for Cody to get a little bit more sympathy. It's not as bad as exploiting the troops and cancer kids like a certain John Cena did, but it's still just working over the crowd in an old school sense of, I have an injury now cheer me on. And that's kind of, I still thought it was like 2/3 it was probably real, but Cody comes from that old school mentality of Dusty Rhodes, like kind of work over the crowd and all that. So we get just fast forward to the main event. Oh my gosh. So Cody's coming out, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, he'll have it wrapped up and maybe it's a work. But then you see a little bit of a bruise on his chest, because he's wearing his jacket. So you'll see a little bit of a bruise, and I'm like, oh well, maybe you could have put makeup. Oh my lord, when this man Cody Rhodes takes his jacket off, this is no makeup job clearly, because his chest and arm are about 3 times the size of his other chest and arm. It was that swollen, and it was all the way through the bicep, and oh my gosh, and no joke, I don't have the exact, but he went 15, maybe even 20 minutes in the Hell in a Cell. They definitely played it safe at points, but they also were hitting him, at least not full force, but hitting him with kendo sticks and different things on the actual bruise. That bruise changed color by the end. Somewhere in the middle of the match, the bruise went from like deep purple to like it started turning pink. Like the bruise literally was changing colors throughout the match. I don't know how much extra damage this man Cody Rhodes added to himself, but that bruise was changing colors during the match. But Cody wrestled like it was, of course, Seth had to like dumb it down a little bit and like Seth threw himself through a table at a point just to try and make this a great match. So Seth was doing all he could, and you knew they had to slow it down a little bit. But I tell you what, Cody barely didn't do anything that he wouldn't have. Like he was getting slammed, he was getting hit with weapons on his bruised. Like I'm talking, it's not clearly not a makeup job. It was so much bigger than the other set. Oh my god! So like when he revealed it, the entire crowd, me, the announcers, we all gasped. We're like, like, oh my god! And then you just hear Seth Rollins go, ah, because like storyline, he'd be excited about that. But my god, that was a roller coaster of the main event. Because every like, I've had bruising that big on my ankle, not that size of an area, but that big, and I couldn't even sit there without being in pain. I couldn't even move my leg from it, like while sitting and without being in pain. This man Cody went out there and I don't know how much extra damage he caused himself or what, but my goodness. So we'll get into the show and I'll talk about the main event some more, but wow, what a roller coaster. I'm still coming down from that high of just seeing Cody tough it out for 15, 20 minutes. Let me see if I can find the exact Um, but I tell you, like I said, they had to slow it down a little bit to accommodate for the injury, but he was still just going out there and doing like he was taking moves and all that. Like 20 wow. I was selling him short. 24 minutes, 20 seconds. Cody Rhodes went with Seth Rollins coming into the match with a torn, completely off the bone pec muscle. Um, and wins it. Cody wins. 24 minutes this man went with a torn pec muscle that was swollen the size of his head. And he was getting hit with chairs and all that and toughing it out, getting bumps and oh my god. It was kind of disgusting and it was kind of gross to watch and it was kind of a little iffy. But if you're squeamish, like whew, that was probably a little much. Whew. But I'll talk about that more at the end here. We'll get into the card. Um, like I said, coming into it, we didn't expect much. It was a B pay-per-view. Um, Mostly Raw, only one SmackDown match, nothing we even wanted. Only two titles would be defended. No bloodline in sight, who holds most of the gold in WWE. Bloodline wasn't featured whatsoever or really even mentioned. But this show ended up being amazing for all the reasons I said. And I came into it with zero expectations, which is part of it. If you came into this expecting like a really good show, like of course most of us expected something really good out of Seth and Cody, but none of us could imagine an emotional journey like that. So it was on like another level, which necessarily I don't want to see too often because it was hard to watch. Because like literally Cody just taking a step was painful for him, and then he was out there like taking bumps and stuff. So um wow. So let's get into it. Like I said, you didn't have to watch the pre-show. There was no pre-show matches. Now that we've had two of these B pay-per-views ever since WrestleMania, we can kind of see what WWE's um what their model is for these premium live events going forward. At least for the B version of the pay-per-views. Now, I assume they'll change and be a little bit bigger and grandiose for the stadium shows. But we'll see how Money in the Bank goes now that it's not a stadium show. And I think they took Roman Reigns off the cover. Now, and I haven't even mentioned it yet, but I'm sure most of our favorites to win the Money in the Bank was Cody. And they could still have Cody win it, but I mean, he must have to go in for surgery now. Like, and then how bad, much worse did he make it? So, there's a lot to be determined. But as I was saying, we can kind of see how these pay per views are going now. It's not going to be a ton of matches. They're going to give these matches time. It's not necessarily going to be a ton of title matches, and it's also not going to have any pre-show matches. And there's not going to be any matches added that we didn't advertise. So we kind of see now that they've done two in a row, WrestleMania Backlash and Hell in the Cell. It's both been about 7 matches long, exactly 3 hours, no extra matches added, no pre-show matches. But they do give them time, which and it seems like um I mean, it's kind of good that they don't like they're not just pigeonholing championship matches in because they think everything. But it's also ridiculous that the Intercontinental title hasn't been defended for 14 months on a pay per view. So there has to be some kind of even balance here. But for the second month in a row, these B pay per views, I thought it was all right with the pacing and they let these matches have a little bit of length. We don't have to even tune into the pre-show, so that cuts out like an hour out of your time watching, and then it only lasts about 3 hours. So it's basically a glorified Raw, especially this one, which barely had any SmackDown presence, to the point where they didn't even call in Pat McAfee. They just let him stay at home. There's no reason to bring Pat McAfee in to call Baron Corbin versus Madcap Moss. So Pat McAfee didn't even make an appearance because literally that was the only SmackDown match. So but like I said, this ended up being a pretty good pay per view, and it kicked off with the Raw Women's Championship triple threat. Bianca Belair coming in as champion. I mean, I'm pretty sure we all expected her to retain because that would just be another controversy, kind of almost as bad as making her lose in 26 seconds at SummerSlam would be to have her lose the title in 2 months after WrestleMania the next time she wins it. So um, we all came in expecting Belair to win and wanting Belair to win, but there was always that little thought in the back of your mind where they could have either Asuka or Becky pin each other without Bianca being involved, and then that's the feud they run with for the next 2 months. And I'm really glad that they didn't go that route because again, that would have made Bianca's reign look pretty bad, and it just they made the right call here. So the match again this pay-per-view was in Chicago, so really good crowd, and Chicago's a really good way to determine like how it's a good barometer of people if people are actually over or not, if the wrestlers are actually over or not, because Chicago's very now these aren't the same Chicago crowds that you got 25 years ago or even 15 years ago, and hopefully a lot of those hardcore fans from back in the day had all those as we call them the lapsed fans. Hopefully they've come back and they're now watching at least come back into the fold with AEW and New Japan. And with Chicago, Chicago has three big shows in a row, I think in the 3 month span here. So they got Hell in the Cell tonight, and then Forbidden Door is in the end of the month. And then pretty sure that All In or All Out, I don't know which way they're going to name it now that they own the rights to it, but that's also in Chicago. So a lot of those hardcore Chicago fans, even if they would be kind of maybe interested in going to a Hell in a Cell, are probably going to save their money and go to either Forbidden Door or All In slash Out, um, or if not both of those shows over Hell in a Cell. But I still would say the Chicago crowd. I've been in the Chicago crowd before. I'm from Detroit. I've been in the Chicago crowd once before, and it was actually in a similar kind of circumstance where an injury happened before the event, which made it into a better event than it would have been beforehand. I went to the I think it was a No Mercy, and it was the one where Cena got injured just before it. So they started the pay-per-view out by Vince McMahon handing Randy Orton the title, who immediately defended it against Triple H, and Triple H won the title. And then later on, Triple H was already scheduled to fight Umaga, so Triple H defended the title against Umaga a little bit later. And then in the main event, Randy Orton won the title back. So Randy Orton won the title twice in front of me in Chicago. Um, and also Triple H won the title and defended it before losing it back. So and that was all because John Cena got injured just before the event. So kind of similar circumstances here, not like completely, but you know what I'm saying. But anyway, it was a good hot Chicago crowd. They were hot for this Bianca Asuka Becky match. They all showed that the crowd showed proper respect. I'm not gonna. Well, yeah, proper respect. All three of these women can go. All three of these women should be respected. I understand Becky gets a lot of hate, maybe from like JD from New York and people like that, and I understand it. The whole "my precious" stuff is pretty annoying and kind of cheesy, and like it's in theater class. But at the same time, if you remember, Becky was in this weird thing where they had Becky be a heel, but nobody in the crowd wanted to boo her. So then she was looking for things to actually get people to boo her. So when she found stuff like, oh, people kind of thought it was really cheesy and they hated the whole my precious thing and stuff like that, I think she just that made her lean into it even more because she's desperate for people. If they're gonna make me be a heel, I need people to boo me. And what makes me think that is because the exact same thing's happening with her husband Seth Rollins. Everybody and their mother hates the Seth Rollins laugh, and it's completely annoying. And I think it's only because that's the only thing that like Seth has in his arsenal to make him get boos and be hated by people because he's still a heel as well. So it the second that either Becky or Seth turn face, they're no longer going to be like annoying with the my precious, or they're going to be doing the incessant laughing. I think that's just like I don't know if it works or not, but I'm just saying in their mind, I'm pretty sure they're thinking that's the only way I can get some like true heel heat is by like doing things that people don't like. Um, which is unfortunate because I love Seth Rollins, but I hate the laughing and stuff. But again, they're trying to make him be a heel. So, and in 2022, like having them win by cheating isn't going to get them like heel heat. It's going to make all the heat is going to be directed towards like Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. Like everyone's going to be like, "Why'd you book it like that?" They're not going to be like, "Oh, you dastardly heel, Seth." So I think like him laughing and Becky doing annoying things are just them. They're trying their best to get heel heat in the 2022 era in a PG like kind of WWE era. Now we saw on like Wednesday, MJF can get heel heat, and but it also takes like working the fans by like, oh, MJF didn't show up to the fan fest, but I'm sure it was Tony Khan that told MJF not to go to the fan fest because it's storyline. So like, it's all a complicated thing, and we'll see where that goes in the long run. Maybe Tony Khan's going to get the heat in the long run when this comes out. It's a risky move because you know you're going to anger your wrestlers, but that's another story. Anyway, this triple threat match, really good match. I mean, it kind of went to them going to trying for their signature and finisher moves a little early, in my opinion. This match went 18:55, but I would say about 6 or 7 minutes into it, they were already trying for finishers and stuff. But a lot of good counterattacks, a lot of people getting hit with finishers, but then getting the count broken up. So I see what they were doing. It was which made it a pretty good match. Like a lot of you got to see all of the Becky, Asuka, and Bianca move set here. You got to see the entire move set. Always good to have matches where they just showcase matches basically. So this was a showcase match to show that WWE Raw Women's Division is much better than the SmackDown division, and it also set up the finish of the match. Saw like I said, a lot of people were getting hit with finishers and then having the other person break it up, and the finish came down to Becky hitting, I think it was the rock bottom on Asuka, but then Bianca came and pulled Becky out of the ring and stole the pin. And it wasn't heelish whatsoever. It was just part of the competitive nature. I don't think this makes Bianca look any worse. I think what it does do is it sets up, your next match whenever the next time the title will be defended will be Bianca versus Becky Lynch in a rematch from WrestleMania 38. Maybe that'll take place at Money in the Bank, which is our next premium live event, because Asuka was pinned here from a Becky Lynch finisher, but pinned by Bianca. So expect to see Bianca versus Becky in a rematch from WrestleMania 38 at Money in the Bank, but you never know what could happen. It could be like let's say Shayna Baszler wins Money in the Bank, and then she catches in on Bianca and makes it a triple threat, Becky, Bianca. So you never know what could happen at Money in the Bank, but it looks like maybe Money in the Bank is going to be Bianca versus Becky. And like I said, everybody in the Chicago crowd showed them the proper respect. They were into the match, and it was a good way to open the match. 18:55, good length. Probably I would have gave them like 5 more minutes, and then you would have had 5 more minutes before they went into hitting the signature and finishers. 5 more minutes of regular wrestling would have done me a little. I would have preferred that, but not too much to complain. Nothing offensive out of this match. Made the Raw Women's Title the Prestige look good. It looks fine right now, definitely compared to SmackDown. So no complaints here. Before the next match, you guys got to go out of your way to go find the MVP. Put out a diss track on Bobby Lashley, and it was amazing. Oh man, MVP was saying like, "What were you without me? Like, you almost got to the Olympics, but with me, you would have been there." This is all in like diss track, like spitting bars version, mind you. And then he's also like, "Oh, what what do you have? The ECW title? That was trash, son." Like stuff like that, like admitting that the WWE CW title was nothing, and without saying it, also include you can include that he was also talking about the Impact title as well. Um, they just didn't name it by name. But they did call out their own WWE CW as calling it trash. So go check out. There was a music video to go with it. So there's a diss track by MVP against Bobby Lashley with a music video, and definitely check that out. But that led us to another some match that nobody wanted that we've already seen multiple versions of. But this version is Bobby Lashley versus Omos and MVP in a 2-on-1 handicap match. And like I said, the music video and the hype for the match was cool, but of course nobody cared about the actual match and stuff like that. You knew what to expect. It was going to be your MVP cheating. It was going to be so like as cool as the MVP music video was. It immediately it's just MVP's distraction, blah blah blah. Nobody was really into it, but I will tell you what. By the end of this match, there is a new contender for who could potentially. So we came out of this show Hell in a Cell with two different people that look like they could be the next contenders to take out Roman Reigns, and it's not Drew McIntyre, who I don't know what they're doing with Drew, but I cannot stand Drew's babyface run. He needs to get rid of the sword. He needs to get rid of the comedy stuff. But basically, this match was what you would expect. MVP cheating because he was allowed to because he was in the match, so he wasn't going to get like thrown out as if he was the manager. MVP got in there a little bit and wrestled, but it was mostly Omos and Lashley. A couple big power moves, stuff we've seen before. But I tell you what, bro, this Chicago crowd, which is usually like if Chicago thinks the babyface is good, then that babyface is actually over. Like if you're over in Chicago, you're gonna get over in like Wichita, Kansas. You're gonna get over in Omaha, Nebraska. You're gonna get over in Mobile, Alabama. If you're over in Chicago as a babyface, then you're over everywhere, bro. And Bobby Lashley, by the end of this match, this crowd was probably some of the. I think they might have been the most loud out of anybody, including the main event for Bobby Lashley. This crowd and to be fair, the crowd might have been killed off by the Happy Corbin. I think the crowd got killed by the Happy Corbin Madcap Moss match, and they never recovered. But since this was early, they might have not been dead yet. But Bobby Lashley got the biggest pop in the entire night. This crowd was going crazy for Bobby Lashley, and he looked like a star, and he looked like a legit contender that to go against Roman Reigns, unlike Drew McIntyre. So I'm all for Bobby Lashley being a contender for the title. I'd be fine with him being champion. The almighty gimmick is pretty cool. I would definitely prefer him to start wearing the fancy suits like he was when he was a heel. Fancy suits doesn't exactly mean you have to be a heel. Like, look at Cody. Cody's doing the fancy suit stuff. So, Bobby Lashley, fancy suits, running through people, I think could be your champion going forward for the next couple of years. Um, but here's the thing: the guy in the main event just threw down his freaking just threw it down. Cody came into this match tonight, man. This thing was his pec was swollen to the size of his head and wrestled for 25 minutes in a Hell in a Cell match. Dumbed down version still, but it looked like it was hard to breathe, let alone walk, let alone take bumps, let alone get hit with weapons. So coming out of this show, Bobby Lashley and Cody Rhodes look like the two top baby faces in the entire not country, but in the company. So, and they're both on Raw as of right now. So that leaves Roman over on SmackDown, who's no showing like the entire summer, holding hostage both titles. Meanwhile, you've got two of your top baby faces over on Raw and Bobby Lashley and Cody Rhodes. I don't know what you do. I don't know when Roman's going to be around to defend the belt. I don't know how long Cody's going to be out with this injury. If Cody's still going to come back and win the Money in the Bank, or are you going to just maybe Bobby Lashley should have Money in the Bank and then just immediately cash it in like as soon as possible? Like, I don't know where you want to go with this. But legitimately, coming out of this show, Lashley and Cody Rhodes look like the two top baby faces in the entire company, and they don't have necessarily any titles to go for. Do you put the U.S. title on either Lashley or Cody, and let them try to elevate that for the summer? You could move one of them to SmackDown, maybe move Cody over to SmackDown. He could win the Intercontinental feud with Gunter. I don't know what they're gonna do with Roman not around, but those are your two top baby faces. Drew McIntyre is a fraud compared to um Bobby Lashley and Cody Rhodes. I'm 50% that it's at least a 50% chance that Drew McIntyre would have got booed out of the building if he won that if he was in Bobby Lashley's same match and everything else was the exact same. I feel like they would have booed or at least a small cheer compared much smaller cheer compared to Lashley. So again, this match was nothing, but it did tell us that Lashley is indeed over and they should do something with Lashley. I wouldn't mind seeing Lashley have the US title if that's all that he can have right now. Otherwise, if Cody's injured, um, Lashley's a candidate for, like I said, the Money in the Bank and then cash in at SummerSlam. Because SummerSlam's only, I think, 3 weeks. No more than 4, but it might only be 3 weeks after Money in the Bank is SummerSlam. SummerSlam's like July 30th this year. It's not even in August. So you could see Bobby Lashley versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, with Lashley winning like maybe the WWE title and then Roman keeps the Universal title. But I could see Lashley winning the Money in the Bank and then cashing it in at like for a scheduled match at SummerSlam. Because he looked like a legitimate star coming out of this match. The next match, the build for KO versus Ezekiel. Now, if you guys don't know, Ezekiel is Elias, and the whole gimmick here is that it's just Ezekiel. So Ezekiel is Elias, just with shave. He shaved his beard and he wears different tights and he doesn't act the same. But it is him, and then KO's the only one that like is like that's Elias just shaved his beard, but everyone's like, no, that's Ezekiel. That's his younger brother. So that's the build coming in this, and it sounds like crap, and it pretty much kind of is, but with KO attached, it's not too bad. All Ezekiel had to do was play the straight man, so as long as Ezekiel didn't break character and start laughing during any of the segments, that's all he had to do, while KO just had to do comedy based around it. And I thought they did all right. There was bits here and there, like when they said DNA test was contaminated because KO was having Alpha Academy help him. Mostly Chad Gable was helping KO. Like he administered a lie detector test to Ezekiel that Ezekiel passed. And then I thought that segment was going to be a lot funnier than it was, but it wasn't too bad either. It had Chad Gable and KO doing some comedy. But then they sent in a DNA test, and I laughed out loud when they said it was contaminated by barbecue sauce. And then they both look over at Otis. So that was pretty funny. But other than that, it's not as terrible as a I'm my brother, but it's really the same person storyline should be because KO's attached, but it's also not as good as you think a KO storyline could be. So it's just average. So wasn't expecting a whole lot coming into this match. And what we did get is this was our first match out of 3 tonight. Out of 7 matches, 3 had color, 3 of them had people bleeding, and Ezekiel started bleeding from the head after taking getting hit into the post on the outside. So he had a trickle of blood coming down. It wasn't a gusher, but it wasn't just one trickle either. Other than that, the crowd was getting into the crowd was somewhat into it to the fact that like they were booing KO during the match, but then spoiler alert, KO like just goes on a flurry at the end, and this match ended up being 9 minutes 20, which it felt like 15, but so that's not a sign of a good match. If I felt like it was 15, but it was only 9 minutes 20 seconds. But KO goes on a flurry at the end and gets cheered afterwards. But during the match, it seemed like the crowd was into the storyline. They knew to boo KO, so they were booing KO and cheering Ezekiel. It started out hot. It seemed like maybe Ezekiel didn't have the stamina. I don't know. Like I said, I thought it was a 15-minute match, but it was only 9. But it seemed like Ezekiel was winded in the middle, but maybe that's just what they wanted to do is just slow it down in the middle. I don't know. But it was boring and the crowd didn't react to anything in the very middle. They were into it at the beginning and then they got into it at the end, like I said. KO's over with the crowd. They got respect, like I said, at the end. They booed him during the match, but then showed him respect after the win. And there was no shenanigans happened. Nobody else showed up. We'll have to see where this story goes on Raw. I don't know where the story could go. The like in my universe mode, the story went eventually to KO had a tag team match where against Ezekiel analyzed both and he was proven wrong, but that's the video game. This is real life where he actually is the real person. So what do? Do you rehire Damian Sandow and have him do like a Mizdow version of Elias? Or like I don't know what you do here, but um, I'm somewhat intrigued. But hopefully KO can start doing some better things, having some better matches. I know him and Sami Zayn both are kind of now in this role where they're there for like some good comedy and like to be like upper echelon mid carders, but also not wrestling a ton and not doing like the crazy stuff like they used to. So like they clearly have used up a lot of they've worn their bodies down. Let's just be honest. KO and Sammy are like have worn their bodies down by this point and are now kind of on this more character driven arc, which is fine. And they're always like KO and Sammy are some of the most exciting and best parts of any show, whether they're wrestling or not, as long as they're on the show. So that's kind of the role that they're in, and that's all right because as we know, if you've watched them since the early 2000s, they put their body through hell. So um, and I expect to see that more out of like Seth as we keep going here. Seth can still give you a great match here and there, but as we go here, I think it's going to be less and less of common, if you know what I'm saying. But again, KO gets the win in 9 minutes, and really nothing was resolved as far as it's not like KO didn't win anything by winning other than winning, if you know what I mean. Like nothing in the story's changed. So the next one, a lot more story based driven. It's the Judgment Day. I was a big fan of Edge putting when this first started, and before it was even called the Judgment Day, and it was just Edge, and now he's got Damian Priest, and then they bring in Rhea Ripley, so they've got a girl. Edge has a girl and guy, and those are like his angels of something that he calls them now. And it was gonna be something like the Brood. He even mentioned the Brood. Like Edge in a promo was like, "I've always had this in me. Like, not only was I the ultimate opportunist, but I was also in the Brood, and I've learned when I was in the Ministry of Darkness with the Undertaker." So like just bringing it, like invoking all these things like the Brood and the Ministry of Darkness and all of that. Like I was hyped. I was like, because I've always been an Edge fan, and I was a Brood fan, and I was a Ministry of Darkness fan. So all that seemed cool. And like, yeah, Damian Priest, he's a good fit, and Rhea Ripley, yeah, she's a good fit. Let's see what we can do here. And it can still go somewhere, and it can still be cool, and there's still a lot of elements that I love. I love the aesthetics of it. The purple wings, that's a cool gimmick on the Titantron to make it look like they're the ones that have the wings. That's cool. I like the outfits. I like the premise of it. The whole all that's pretty cool. Rhea Ripley like dyed her hair darker. Damian Priest wore like more leather than he was, even though he was kind of already that way, and so was Rhea, but they're even darker now. I was really into all of it, but man, just like the the last like 6 weeks or so, I don't know. It's not exactly what I was expecting. Like it kind of been a letdown, and it was capped off on Raw on Monday when Liv Morgan pinned Rhea Ripley for the 1, 2, 3, and then got the better of her after the match as well. So I mean, come on, Rhea Ripley just turned heel. She just joined this new faction. We're trying to get this new faction off the ground, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Rhea Ripley was able to destroy Liv just before she joined the Judgment Day, or like as she was joining. But now that she's fully ingrained in the Judgment Day, she not only gets pinned to the mat by Liv, but after the match gets beaten up and looked like a fool as well. So I understand that you have to get the comeuppance on a heel at a point, but you have to establish them as like threats before that. So the Judgment Day's already kind of been. I was not coming into this match looking forward to it. And if you've been following along on this channel, I've been featuring the Judgment Day as a 7 man. Well, it's 4 men, 3 women faction for a long time. Ever since Survivor Series, they held all the unified gold. So my hopes were high for the Judgment Day. I didn't know who they were going to bring in. So the people, and we still don't know what they're going to do, and we don't know who they're going to bring in. But so far, it's been like bland promos and talking in riddles, but really talking about nothing. And like, oh, join, but what do you get when you join? Like Rhea Ripley killed Liv before she joined, but now she not only gets beat, but makes like she looks like crap. So of course, I figured the Judgment Day are going to beat tonight. They're facing it's Bull Liv Club, which I know is sacrilege for some of you New Japan fans, but Bull Liv Club. It's got correct me if I'm wrong, the 2 first ever leaders, Finn Balor and AJ Styles of Bullet Club, along with Liv Morgan. And I expected them to win tonight, but that doesn't excuse, and they did win tonight, but that doesn't excuse the making Rhea look like crap and the bland, boring promos for weeks. And so hopefully they can correct this. What I did in my universe mode is I had Tommaso Ciampa join, Alexa Bliss joined, and then through Alexa Bliss and Edge's like supernatural powers that they have in them through being in the Brood, in the Ministry, and then Alexa has Bray Wyatt's powers. They made Finn Balor be the Demon full time and then join like against his will. Like they now control the Demon Finn Balor, and Finn Balor's the Demon full time. So they have Tommaso Ciampa, the Demon Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and Edge for the men's side. And then on the women, you've got like I made it so that Alexa and Rhea are tag champions, and then the crown jewel of the Judgment Day, the returning Bailey, who you could go a lot of places with that. However you want, you can make her as dark and gothic as you want, or as little as you want. But the crown jewel, so you be Bailey, and then maybe eventually like Rhea usurps her um at a point, but that's way down the line. Like once Edge is out of the picture, then there would be a whole battle between maybe the women and the men at a point, like because it would be who's next in charge. Rhea, is it Bailey, is it Tommaso, is it Damian Priest? And the whole time they have this guy that doesn't even want to be there under their control. Can the real Finn Balor ever exist? So there's a lot of things you could do with that, and I'm sorry for talking my fantasy booking, but if you're interested in that stuff, that's what I've been doing on this channel, and watch some of my streams to check that out. But yeah, the Judgment Day, they win. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan started the match, and a lot of Rhea just beat the crap out of Liv for a long time, while also Rhea was talking trash to AJ and Finn. So you can kind of tell where this was going to head eventually. It was going to eventually lead to Rhea Ripley getting the upper hand, um, because she was going to distract her, like hit the men, and then they wouldn't be able to hit her. And that's exactly what the finish was. The finish was Finn Balor about to beat Edge with a coup de grace, but then Rhea Ripley gets in the way, and then of course he has to freeze, but then Edge gets back in his feet, and Edge is the one that pins Finn Balor to finish this match. But most of the match was Damian Priest versus Finn Balor. A good portion of this match was Damian Priest versus Finn Balor. Not too bad. And then Edge and AJ got in there. Some pretty good stuff. At some point, it looked like AJ was busted open. So, um, second match in a row with blood, because I looked like AJ got busted open on his head. But yeah, we all figured Rhea was going to be the person to allow the Judgment Day to win. And yeah, Rhea Ripley gets in the way of Finn Balor. Finn Balor can't hit her, can't run into her, whatever. Um, and it cost him. Edge gets the pin on Finn Balor, and we really, it resolves nothing. No one can forget the fact that Rhea Ripley just made it look like trash by losing the Liv. Like, how do you join something to be better, but then have a worse outcome than you had before you joined? She killed Liv Morgan before she joined, and then she lost. Not only lost to Liv Morgan, but then got made like to look like a fool after the match. None of it makes sense. So hopefully they can fix this, and hopefully they get some more members soon. And right now, instead of looking like the Ministry of Darkness or anything like that, they're more looking like the original Dark Order, like join us, and then they're kind of a joke. So hopefully they can get some better stuff. We followed that up with everybody's most wanted match. Everyone wanted it to replace Cody once he got injured in the main event. And I'm joking, of course, it was freaking Madcap Moss versus Happy Corbin in the match that nobody in their right mind wanted. The Chicago crowd didn't really make any noise. And like I said, the funniest moment of the entire night was once Madcap Moss gets the pin in 12 minutes 5 seconds and a no holds barred. So it was a Triple H special, one of those tons of plunder, tons of weapons, brawl on the outside, walk and brawl. 12 minutes 5 seconds felt like 22. Madcap Moss gets the win after like pilmanizing the neck of um, Happy Corbin, maybe writing off that character, but who knows anymore, and who really cares? But Madcap Moss gets the win, and then immediately we cut to a crowd shot where a guy in a RK Bro 420 shirts flipping off Madcap for winning. So that pretty much summed up the entire match. No big reactions from anybody. I should have said earlier that the Chicago crowd pretty much gave everybody respect in the Judgment Day versus Finn Balor, AJ, and Liv match. Nobody was super over, but nobody got jeered or anything. They respected everybody. The next match, I'm gonna grab a beer real quick and talk. But the next match was the United States Championship match. Mustafa Ali getting a title shot in his hometown on pay-per-view. And we are also know that Mustafa Ali's like is seemingly getting punished. Now, some people would say, well, if you're on TV and like in getting title shots and stuff like that, how could that be being punished? But just like go back to that one segment where it was literally 3-on-1 heels getting the upper hand over Mustafa Ali, when Veer Mahan, Theory, and The Miz were taking selfies over his lifeless body. So if that's not like just a burial for someone that had the audacity to speak out, I don't know what is. But Mustafa Ali does get a title shot in his hometown. Doesn't get the exact response, like nowhere near the Lashley response, nowhere near the Cody response. Mustafa Ali probably only the third or fourth biggest pop of the night, which I guess most of it comes down to everybody knows that Mustafa Ali wants to be gone and that he's just here to make everybody else look good at this point. So everybody expected Theory to win, and Theory did win in 10 minutes 24 seconds. Again, I'm happy to see the U.S. title on the pay-per-view because, like I said, it's been 14 months since the Intercontinental title has been defended on pay-per-view. But it just wasn't that great of a match. The crowd didn't care that much. I've seen Raw matches that are better. So, and the crowd just didn't really care about Mustafa Ali, despite him having the Chicago crowd or the Chicago flag on his tights and being from Chicago. So kind of a mess, but like I said, at least the damn title is on the line at a pay-per-view. Like I was saying earlier, I might put the US title on Bobby Lashley. At this point, Bobby Lashley is over, and if he can't get a title shot against Roman Reigns, have Bobby Lashley maybe not destroy Theory, but at least beat him, and then hold the U.S. title for the summer. I've got nothing against Theory, but right now the crowd's not buying him as like a legitimate heel. The rumor is that it's going to be Theory versus John Cena for the U.S. title at SummerSlam, but I don't know if that would help Theory at all. That I really don't know. So it's up in the air what they do with that. You could give Lashley the Money in the Bank, like I said, and maybe have Lashley win at least the WWE title at SummerSlam by cashing in and announcing it beforehand and getting a match with Roman. And then Drew can still fight Roman for the Universal title at Clash at the Castle, and they can either give the title to McIntyre or not at that point. But I think at this point, and the problem is, like, so what we found tonight is Cody Rhodes and Bobby Lashley are your two most over stars right now. And one of them might be out of action, but we don't know how for how long. I'm guessing they were going to give the Money in the Bank to Cody, but excuse me, but now it's up in the air. But you still could have him come out there and tough it out if he wants to again in a Money in the Bank match, win the Money in the Bank, and then go for surgery and be out for until like after Clash of the Castle. After Clash of the Castle, I think is it might go all the way to Survivor Series at that point. So I'm not sure if there is a pay-per-view between Clash of the Castle and Survivor Series. I'd have to check. It might be that one of the Saudi ones. So we'll have to look into that. But again, I wish they would have given Theory and Ali 5 more minutes and actually let them go in the third gear, but that's not what we got. But again, I can't complain because at least we got one of the mid-card titles on a pay-per-view for once. And that just led us to the main event, which I've kind of already talked about already. But my God, the main event was an emotional roller coaster. Like I said, for me personally, I came into this pay-per-view 3 minutes before it started, found out that Cody Rhodes is injured. And then, like I said, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh, Cody Rhodes comes from that old school mentality like Dusty Rhodes, and they got a little bit of Carney in them where they might exaggerate an injury here and there just for added effect. And like even when he came out, I'm like, oh, maybe it's gonna be makeup and that bruise is just makeup. But as soon as Cody Rhodes takes his robe off, You see that is swollen to the size 3 times bigger than it should be. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So this man, Cody Rhodes, then proceeds to wrestle where he's taking bumps. And it was very slowed down match. Seth had to go in the slow down in the half gear. Which didn't really take away from the match too much because I mean this match, the story of it was Cody Rhodes shouldn't even be there. It's disgusting to look at, and it's cringing like in a way, not in like a this is nerdy kind of cringe, but just cringe like it's hard to watch. And it lasted for almost 25 minutes, where by somewhere in the middle of it, Cody Rhodes' giant bruise, swollen bruise, changed from purple to pink at points, and it was just kind of nasty to watch. And Cody Rhodes was like at a point you thought he was dead when he got through power bomb through a table that was in the court laid in the corner, and you're like, oh, you can't kick out of this. Cody proceeds to kick out at 2 with the torn completely from the bone pectoral that was 3 sizes too big, and he kicks out with that shoulder, and you're like, my God, like Cody is winning this. Cody, like if anybody wasn't a Cody fan already coming into this night, if they watch this match, they are now a Cody fan. Because this man just lives for wrestling. I don't know how he did it. Like I've said, I've had twice, maybe 3 times in my life, my ankle has swollen 3 times its normal size, and I can't even sit there without I can't even breathe without it hurting. So for Cody to go out there, his entire right bicep, his shoulder, his pec torn from the clean from the bone, swollen 3 sizes too big, and wrestles for 25 minutes in a Hell in a Cell match with weapons hitting right on it. If you're not a fan of Cody at this point, you're just a hater. So even me, I'm a jaded 36-year-old man who almost hates every baby face ever, and I always love the heels. Even I have to say, like, man, this Cody Rhodes guy, bro, just a beast for him to tough himself through that. So we're just gonna have to sit and wait. Is Cody gonna show up the Money in the Bank and win Money in the Bank like he was probably scheduled to, or is he gonna go to surgery and be out for 3 months, or is we don't know what's gonna happen. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait for the news, turn into Raw tomorrow night, and find out from there. But overall, like I said, you got to give this show a thumbs up. It had a little bit of everything. It had an emotional roller coaster. It made me laugh. It had 2 good matches out of 7, like 2 like really good matches. The others were not terrible, other than Baron Corbin, I would say. But um, it had blood in 3 different matches, and then that emotional roller coaster in the main event was on another level. Um, So yeah, get a B show in WWE gets a thumbs up from me amongst all the best of the Super Juniors in New Japan and the AEW pay-per-views and all this other stuff going on with now we've got next Saturday's New Japan Dominion. It's going to be Goto versus Tanahashi, and the winner of that is going to fight against either Moxley. So the winner of Goto versus Tanahashi is going to fight the winner of Moxley versus the winner of a battle royal, which literally we have could be anybody. It could be MJF, it could be Malachi Black, it could be Dash Wilder. Like we have no idea. So probably more than likely we're finally gonna get, after years of waiting, Tanahashi versus John Moxley, and it's gonna be for the interim AEW championship. And literally anybody could win that match, because you know that the original plan was CM Punk versus Tanahashi, and they might still want to run that match back. So maybe they would have the AEW interim title be defended in Japan for a few months. So now you've got the AEW title defended in, although they go to G1 around that time. So, but yeah, we might see the interim AEW championship over in New Japan for a couple months until we see what's going on with CM Punk. Again, another person we're gonna have to wait and see what the injury, how long he's gonna be out injured. And I just knew it too when I saw him take that right when CM Punk came out to do that stage dive on Dynamite, and he was about to do the stage dive. I was like, no, don't do it. Like, and then he does it, and then like he kind of grimaces, and then he gets up and he holds his foot a little bit. Like, I kind of knew it. And then the match wasn't that great, and it was kind of botchy. And then there was reports of him limping severely later in the night when it wasn't on camera. So, oh my gosh, a lot is going on right now. But in and amongst it all, this Hell in the Cell pay per view stands out on its own. I'm not gonna say it was like any just that main event you don't get on you don't get main events like that very often, and it was only because of a freak injury, but still. Cody could have said he didn't want to wrestle, or Vince could have said you're not wrestling. So one of those two things could have happened, and we could have had Mad Cat versus Baron Corbin in a Hell in a Cell in the main event. But we didn't, and we came out of this pay per view with two big stars, Cody Rhodes and Bobby Lashley, going forward. And I'm excited to see what happens on Raw. And I'm sure they'll let us down, and there'll be a lot of boring stuff, but there should be a couple good things. We got to see. We got to see what they're gonna do now. Alexa Bliss has won what, like 4 or 5 matches in a freaking row now, while being this boring, bland baby face. Obviously, the story is when she's with the doll, she's a bland, boring baby face, and if the doll's gone, like at an Elimination Chamber, she's back to evil. I would like to see her be evil and part of Judgment Day, at least as a background character. I'm not a huge Bliss fan, but I could see her Edge wanting to utilize her dark powers if they're not going to do anything with her anyway. I mean, and I can't wait for Nikki ASH to finally drop the superhero gimmick. So hopefully that happens tomorrow night. I would like to see Alba Fire join Dewdrop and Nikki Cross. That's what I have going on in my universe mode. So, couple things to look forward to tomorrow night, or at least like questions. Hopefully we get some kind of question about Judgment Day's new recruit. We're at the point where the three of them have been pretty boring, and we need some kind of fresh blood in this feud. So I'm hoping it's not like T-Bar or something, but even T-Bar, like as we know, Dominic Dijakovic is an amazing wrestler when he's actually allowed to be. So even that could be all right, but we'll have to see. Hopefully Tommaso Ciampa actually gets a real entrance, maybe even some promo time, heaven forbid. And I wouldn't mind seeing Ciampa join on Judgment Day tomorrow night. So there's a lot of good things to look forward to. We should see Seth Rollins. I'm assuming Cody won't be there, but then again, maybe we're going to start off Cody Rhodes shirtless. Now it's 4 sizes even bigger than it was tonight, and he kicks off Raw. So a lot of things to look forward to. I think, like I said, it's going to be Becky versus Bianca going forward, and then so that leaves what's next for Asuka. So maybe we'll find out something there. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna set up my stream. I'm right now. I'm in the middle of an NXT 2.0 show, so I was kind of just letting this particular show run on its own. So we'll see what the computer gave us for NXT 2.0, and we're about 7 weeks away from WrestleMania 39 in Hollywood. I've got some pretty big storylines coming up, including you're not going to want to miss what I've got planned in the main event of SmackDown coming up after this NXT. And it's going to be big. So we're only 7 weeks away of WrestleMania in our Universal mode. Come check it out. I'm about to stream that now. Thanks for watching. I hope maybe I'll do a review again tomorrow night after Raw. And again, thumbs up for me on this show. Thanks for watching. Peace.